The Paris scandal, and the hospital secret. What she did after the DNA test shocked everyone. Subscribe now, and hit that like button. If you believe that sometimes the most silent revenge is the loudest, let me know in the comments. What would you do if you caught your spouse cheating while you were at your lowest? The champagne was a golden blur in the crystal flute, a shimmering dance of bubbles ascending towards the iconic Parisian night. On the terrace of a ridiculously expensive restaurant, overlooking the dazzling Eiffel Tower, Julian Vance, a man who thought he had it all, raised his glass. "To us," he murmured to the beautiful blonde across from him, the sound lost in the melody of a distant violin. At that exact, horrifying moment, thousands of miles away under the heavy, humid sky of Miami, the only sound Amara Reyes could hear was the faint, weak cry of her daughter and the frantic screech of her own tires on the asphalt. She was driving, one hand gripping the wheel, the other desperately checking the feverish neck of Luna, her 6-year-old. Luna's tiny body was trembling, her lips dry, and every whimper was a knife turning in Amara's chest. Her husband's absence was a cold, glaring hole in the passenger seat. An unavoidable business trip, Julian had lied. 2, maybe 3 days, closing a massive deal in New York. The lie now echoed in Amara's mind, heavy as an anvil. Amara burst through the automatic emergency room doors, a hurricane of desperation, clutching her daughter. "Help! Please, my daughter is burning up!" The hospital world became a blur of white coats and the sterile, nauseating smell of disinfectant. Luna was rushed inside, and Amara was left leaning against the cold hallway wall, her hands shaking, swallowed by a solitude that wasn't new. She remembered every missed birthday, every Christmas when he claimed late hours, only for her to later discover his emergency had a name, an address, and a generous neckline. But the most crushing memory was waking up alone after her own emergency appendectomy, an empty room, a wilted bouquet, and a hasty note. "Get well, darling. Duty calls." Duty? His duty was to the thrill of the chase, to the validation of other women, to the construction of a parallel life where he was the irresistible hero. Her role was the understanding wife, the guardian of the perfect home, the fool who always forgave. Do you think Amara's years of forgiveness came from love or from the fear of facing the truth about her marriage? Share your thoughts below. The truth on a TV screen and the shattered glass. The profound exhaustion that finally hit Amara wasn't physical. It was an exhaustion of the soul. She sat by Luna's bed, holding her tiny hand, the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor, the soundtrack to her vigil. Beep! The day she found a jeweler's receipt for a necklace she never received. Beep! The scent of another woman's perfume on his jacket. Beep, beep, beep. The symphony of her broken marriage. At one point, walking past the waiting room, a news channel report about tourism flashed on a screen. Images of the Eiffel Tower danced on the glass. For a second, Amara's heart froze. It was a premonition, a cold, irrational dread. "No, he's in New York," she told herself, shaking off the thought. That's what he said. The first light of morning filtered into the room. Amara hadn't slept. She was a woman hardened by years of silent abandonment. She looked at her hands, shaking. Slightly, yes, but they were the hands of a woman who was the rock of her daughter's life. She wasn't weak. Then, her friend Clara called, her voice a mix of concern and hesitation. "Amara, I know you're busy, but are you okay? I'm at the hospital with Luna. Why?" A long, agonizing pause. "Amara, someone we know, Patricia, posted photos on Instagram. She's in Paris. And? Well, she tagged a few people. Julian is with her. The world stopped. Paris. Not New York. With her, the mistress he swore he'd left behind 6 months ago. The photo Amara needed to see. "Send it," she commanded, her voice cold as steel. The notification arrived. She opened the image. There he was, Julian, smiling the same smile he gave her in family photos. He was embracing a dazzling blonde woman. In the background, unmistakable, the Eiffel Tower glowed. The caption read, "Parisian nights with the best company." He wasn't just cheating. He was publicly humiliating her, showcasing his betrayal like a trophy. The woman who forgave died right there, in that sterile hospital room. In her place, a new woman was born. One forged in solitude, baptized by the cruelest betrayal. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She took a single, precise screenshot of the post, including the profile name, the date, and the shameless caption. Every tap on the screen was a strategic move. The queen had just been cornered, and a cornered queen doesn't surrender. She attacks. If you're hooked, give this video a thumbs up, and let's get into the main event, the unexpected face from the past. Amara saved the photo and looked at her daughter. Luna's serene face was her anchor. Everything, from this moment on, would be for her. She was going to break free, not with a scandal, but with strategy. Absorbed in her cold calculations, she barely noticed the door open. A man in a white coat entered, holding a medical chart. He had a sure stance, slightly messy dark hair, and a distinct familiarity. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Sterling, the pediatrician covering Luna's case," the calm professional voice said. Amara turned, ready with a monosyllabic reply, but the words died in her throat. The world spun again. It couldn't be. "Ethan," she whispered, the name a ghost from her past. The doctor stopped abruptly, his professional gaze dissolving into genuine shock. Amara Miller," he replied, using her maiden name, a name she hadn't heard in a decade. "Dr. Ethan Sterling." He wasn't just a doctor. He was her first real love, the man she planned a future with before Julian existed, and the man she had briefly, intensely reconnected with a few years into her miserable marriage with Julian. That brief, stolen romance was her secret, her buried truth. Luna was just a baby then, and when Julian came back with his tearful promises, Amara, terrified of uncertainty, had cut off Ethan abruptly. Now he stood there, the pediatrician, the man who was her bandage, and whom she had discarded. "Pedro, I didn't know you worked here," she stammered, flushing with shame. He quickly regained his composure. "I'm the chief of pediatrics. Been in Miami for 5 years. He forced a tense smile. "The world is small." He turned to Luna. "So, this is your daughter." He checked Luna with a tenderness that tore at Amara's heart. "She will be fine. We'll keep her for observation." Then came the inevitable question. "Where is her father? I need his signature on some consent forms." "He's traveling," she said, the lie tasting bitter. "Business." Ethan looked up from the chart, his brown eyes locking onto hers. He didn't say anything, but Amara saw it. He didn't believe her. He knew her too well. He remembered the woman who had cried in his arms over another man's lies. "I understand," he finally said. "In that case, your signature is enough. I'll be back later. Anything, Amara." He emphasized the last word. The gaze he gave her wasn't that of a doctor to a patient's mother. It was the look of a man who saw through her facade. The game had definitively begun. Do you think Ethan's reappearance was a coincidence, or was it destiny giving Amara a second chance? The final strike. Divorce and DNA. Ethan became her silent ally. He brought her coffee, sped up Luna's tests, and, most importantly, reminded her that she was more than Julian's wife or Luna's mother. He validated her pain without judgment. You're not an idiot, Amara. You were loyal. You tried to save your family. The fault is not with the one who tries to fix things, but with the one who repeatedly breaks them. With Luna safely home, the trap was set. The front door clicked open. Julian's voice, falsely jovial, echoed through the house. "Darling, I'm back." He entered, dragging a designer suitcase, his face boasting a tan that was certainly not from New York. Amara, sitting calmly on the sofa, regarded him with glacial composure. "Welcome back." Her voice was devoid of emotion. Was the trip to Paris productive? Julian froze. Panic flashed in his eyes before being replaced by practiced indignation. "Paris? What are you talking about? I was in New York in endless meetings." She cut him off. "Don't touch me." Amara flipped her phone. The photo, Julian, the mistress, the Eiffel Tower, was his irrefutable proof. "I didn't call you because I don't need you," she said, rising. "Neither do I, nor does she. We never needed you." She tossed a large manila envelope onto the coffee table. "This arrived today." Julian ripped it open. His eyes scanned the document. A divorce petition. "Divorce? Are you crazy? After everything I've given you?" "You're wrong," Amara replied, a humorless smile touching her lips. "You seem to forget how your fortune began. That initial, substantial investment 12 years ago that saved your company and made it what it is today? That money wasn't yours, Julian. It was my inheritance. I believed in you, and I have the transfer documents, all archived and authenticated. My lawyer thinks that constitutes a substantial part of the company's assets. It seems you actually built your empire with my money," she continued, ruthless. "And there's more. We have a complete file. Dates, places, names, including the trip to Angra on our anniversary and the conference in Rio that coincided with my surgery. All documented." Julian's face was this color of ash. He was cornered. He threatened war and vowed to destroy her. Amara simply stood there, watching the man she'd once loved implode. The battle was declared. But for the first time, she wasn't scared. She was ready. The courtroom truth. In the courthouse, Julian's lawyer launched a vicious attack, painting Amara as unstable and unfit, even citing Luna's recent hospitalization, conveniently omitting Julian's Parisian vacation. Then came the final, cruel blow. Julian demanded unilateral custody of Luna and, in a breathtaking act of malice, asked for alimony from Amara. He wanted to humiliate her utterly. "Ms. Reyes, do you have anything to say about this petition?" the judge asked. Amara rose with the dignity of a queen about to make her final move. "Yes, Your Honor, I do. Mr. Vance bases his entire petition on one fundamental premise, that he is Luna's father. He uses this supposed paternity as an instrument to punish me, to wound me in the cruelest way imaginable." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "He fights for revenge, not for love, and I can prove it." She presented a second envelope. "Your Honor, I would like to submit this document as evidence. It is the result of a DNA test conducted in secret last week." The judge read the document. His stoic face broke into an expression of profound shock. He looked from Amara to Julian, whose face was a mask of confusion and fury. 10 years ago, Julian." Amara's voice was clear and steady. "When you first betrayed me, I left. I reconnected with someone from my past, a man I had loved. We had a brief, significant affair. Luna, Your Honor, was born 9 months after that romance. As the DNA test conclusively proves, Julian Vance is not her biological father. The revelation was a vacuum that sucked all the air and all the arrogance out of the room. Julian Vance, the man who neglected his daughter but used her name to wound, was not her father. The father," Amara concluded, her voice softer, is the doctor who cared for her in the hospital a few weeks ago. Dr. Ethan Sterling. The universe has a dark sense of humor, doesn't it? The man who brought her into the world in secret was the same man who saved her while her father celebrated in Paris. Julian collapsed in his chair. Not a physical collapse, but an implosion of the soul. He wasn't the betrayed husband. He was the fool, the deceived man, whose daughter was the fruit of a momentary love with another man. The judge banged the gavel. In light of the evidence, Mr. Vance's petition for custody and alimony is rendered null and void. This hearing is adjourned. Amara walked out of the courtroom. She didn't feel euphoria. She felt peace. The peace of a profound, costly liberation. Across the street, Ethan was waiting. He didn't approach. He just watched her. A nearly imperceptible nod. A silent acknowledgement that her battle was over. Amara smiled. A genuine smile for the first time in years. She got into the car where her mother was waiting with Luna, who was drawing, oblivious to the earthquake that had just redefined her life. "It's over, sweetie," Amara whispered, hugging her daughter tight. "What's over, Mommy?" Luna asked, looking up with her big, warm brown eyes. Ethan's eyes. "The sad part of the story, my love. Now, we start writing the happy ending." The woman who walked out of that courthouse was no longer a victim. She was the author of her own destiny, victorious, embracing her one true love, her daughter. Meaningful conclusion and call to action. This story isn't just about a plot twist. It's about reclaiming your truth. Amara's journey teaches us that the greatest strength is not in fighting the external enemy, but in having the courage to face the painful, long-held secret within. She chose to dismantle her entire life to build something authentic for herself and her daughter. What is the one toxic thing in your life you need to let go of to start writing your own happy ending? Tell me your answer in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next upload. We wish you a beautiful week, full of strength and blessings. Would you like me to translate another story, or perhaps help you outline the next chapter of Amara and Luna's new life? Chapter 2, The Second Chance and the Silent Ally. Don't miss any moment of Amara's journey. Subscribe now and hit that like button. If you believe in second chances, especially when the truth sets you free, what do you think Amara's priority should be? Focusing on her career or rebuilding her relationship with Ethan? Let me know in the comments. The cozy apartment and the weaving threads life after the courtroom felt like stepping out of a tempest and finding sunshine. Amara had moved into a smaller, cozier apartment in a quiet Miami neighborhood. It was a drastic change from Julian's golden cage, but for her and Luna, it brought a true sense of freedom and safety. Luna, though young, felt the shift. She no longer asked, "Where is Daddy?" Instead, she was absorbed in drawing colorful pictures of her new family, just the two of them, and sometimes a figure in a white coat smiling. While the lawyers handled the complex asset division, made less stressful for Amara thanks to the inheritance evidence, Amara poured her energy into launching her own small consulting firm. This focus was the perfect antidote to the emptiness she once felt. As for Ethan, their connection was both strained and beautiful. He called frequently to check on Luna, always "Doctor," but his conversations with Amara inevitably lingered. She couldn't forget his eyes in the hospital, eyes that saw through her pain and betrayal. One afternoon, Amara was struggling to assemble a new bookcase, a task Julian had always insisted she wasn't capable of, when her phone rang. It was Ethan. "Sorry to call unannounced." His voice was hesitant. "I was just checking Luna's chart, making sure everything is stable." "She's doing great." Amara chuckled lightly, her hand still busy with a screwdriver. "Thank you. I'm currently wrestling with this bookshelf, I swear the instructions are written in an alien language." There was a brief silence. Then Ethan spoke. "I have a short evening shift, but I could swing by for a bit, if you'd like." Amara paused. She looked at the screwdriver in her hand. She could say no. She could maintain the wall of separation she'd built for years. But then she remembered the feeling of genuine kindness, of non-judgmental care. "Well, all right, Dr. Sterling," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. "I'll treat you to pizza." Midnight confessions. Over cold coffee. Ethan arrived in a simple t-shirt, not a lab coat, and the bookshelf was perfectly assembled in under 10 minutes. Luna was already asleep, and they sat in the kitchen, sharing cold pizza and coffee. "To be honest, I didn't just come by to check a medical chart," Ethan admitted, looking her straight in the eye. "I know," Amara said, feeling strangely relieved that the truth was out. "Amara, I've thought about you a lot," he sighed. "About what happened, both in the past, and why you went back to Julian after those 2 weeks. I was afraid," she confessed. "Terrified. Terrified of being a single mother. Terrified of losing financial security. Terrified of the chaos of divorce. Julian, he was a fake safe harbor. He convinced me that stability was more important than happiness. And I was the storm," Ethan offered with a sad smile. "No, you were the truth," Amara corrected him. "You were the truth I didn't dare face. I used you as a painkiller. I was terrible, Ethan." "It's okay," Ethan said, lightly touching her hand. A fleeting touch that lasted only a second, but burned away the loneliness in her heart. "I was angry too. But when I saw you and Luna in the hospital, I just saw you, the exhausted woman fighting alone. I knew I couldn't stand by and watch you from afar again." "And Luna," Amara started, but trailed off. Ethan nodded. "She's a miracle, Amara. She's living proof that there was a moment between us. A moment that was real, not a vendetta, not a betrayal. It was love." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "We don't have to try to be a family right away. We just need to learn to be friends for Luna's sake. She is my daughter, and I want to be a part of her life. And if you allow it, I also want to be a part of your life, Amara. With all the truths, no secrets." They talked until dawn that night, not about romantic promises, but about responsibility, medicine, good books, and past mistakes. It wasn't a moment of passion. It was a moment of mending, a foundation stronger than anything Julian had ever promised. "Do you believe that Amara and Ethan's decision to start over as friends is the right way to protect Luna?" New dawn, and the final choice. Weeks passed. Ethan remained Dr. Sterling to Luna, but he became the trusted ally to Amara. He picked Luna up from school when Amara was busy with meetings, took her to the park, and spent evenings helping Luna with homework, under Amara's watchful eye. Julian, after the shocking truth was revealed, practically vanished. He was still engaged in legal battles over assets, and losing, but he no longer showed interest in Luna, the most eloquent proof that she had never been his goal. One Sunday afternoon, Amara, Luna, and Ethan were at the beach. Luna was beaming as Ethan carried her, running along the water's edge. Amara watched them, the 2 most important men in her life. One, though not the one she loved, taught her the most expensive lesson about deceit. The other, the one she missed, had returned. As Luna was engrossed in building a sandcastle, Ethan came and sat beside Amara. He handed her a shell. "Here," he said. "Found it right by the water. It's not perfect, but it's beautiful." Amara smiled, taking the shell. "Like our life, perhaps?" "Maybe so," he said. "Amara, I have to ask you this. Are you sure you want this? Everything. With me. Not because of Luna. Not because of sweet revenge, but for yourself?" Amara looked out at the ocean, taking a deep breath of salt and freedom. She looked back at what had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the loneliness. But she also saw her strength, her resurgence. She didn't need a man to save her anymore. She had saved herself. "I am sure," she said, turning to Ethan. Her eyes no longer held any fear or doubt. "I want this. I want to start over, not with the burden of the past, but with the truth of the present. And I want you here, Ethan." Ethan smiled. It was a radiant, genuine smile. He took her hand, this time not letting go. "We'll do this," he murmured, "starting tomorrow. Not as an arrangement, but as a choice." They sat there, watching Luna, their daughter, laughing with the waves. Meaningful conclusion and call to action. Amara's story teaches us that happiness is not a decree of fate, but a courageous choice. She dared to tear down the false safety, face the most painful truth, and write her own life script. Ethan's reappearance wasn't a miracle, but a reward for her bravery. The greatest strength lies in the ability to let go of what hurt you and believe that you deserve genuine love, even if it arrives late. Leave a comment, sharing the most valuable lesson you took from this chapter. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support Amara on her new journey. Would you like me to continue writing the next developments in Amara, Ethan, and Luna's relationship? Or would you prefer to move on to a brand new story with different characters and settings? Chapter 3. Disclosure and the first test. Subscribe now. And hit that like button if you think true love is worth fighting for, even after years apart. In the comments, tell us, what kind of public backlash do you think Julian will try to create when he finds out about Ethan? The first date, and the elephant in the room. The first date wasn't dinner at an expensive French restaurant or a moonlit walk on the beach. It was a Tuesday evening trip to the grocery store. Amara and Ethan had dropped Luna off at her grandmother's and were navigating the brightly lit aisles, a shopping list in hand. "Do we really need the organic kale?" Ethan asked, pushing the cart, a playful skepticism in his eyes. "It's a metaphor for our life now, Ethan," Amara countered, tossing the kale into the cart. "It's healthy, it's necessary, and it's slightly bitter. But we choose it." They laughed. It was easy, honest, and comfortable. They were two adults rebuilding a foundation, not just on old attraction, but on shared responsibility and brutal honesty. But as they stood in the checkout line, the elephant in the room loomed. "We need to talk about Julian and the outside world," Amara said, her voice dropping. "He's been silent, but I know him. He's plotting. The divorce proceedings are public record, but the DNA test, that's our secret weapon. If he finds out about us, about the reunion of the wife and the secret baby daddy, he'll try to spin it as a massive scandal to discredit me in the settlement case." Ethan gently took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles. "He's going to find out, Amara. I work at a major hospital. You're starting a high-profile consultancy. Miami is a small town of rumors. We need to control the narrative." "How?" "We disclose it on our own terms," Ethan said, his voice firm, the leadership of the chief of pediatrics evident. "We tell the important people first. We tell your friend, Clara, who stood by you. We tell Julian's lawyer, through your lawyer, that this is a legitimate relationship that developed after your separation, long after the initial betrayal. We show them a timeline that proves we aren't hiding." His plan was a strategy, not a cover-up. It was a reflection of the new Amara, proactive, clear, and unafraid of the truth. Do you agree with Ethan's strategy of proactive disclosure, or should they have waited until the divorce was finalized? Comment your advice. The disclosure and the whisper network. They started with Clara. The next day, over coffee, Amara showed Clara the new apartment, talking about Luna, about the consulting firm, and about Ethan. "Wait, Dr. Sterling." Clara nearly dropped her mug. "The pediatrician? The cute one with the serious eyes? But how? Amara laid out the timeline, the college history, the brief, intense reconnection during the separation, the final return to Julian out of fear, and the DNA test. Clara was speechless, then burst into relieved laughter. Amara, you are incredible. You not only outsmarted that snake Julian, but you found the father of your child, who happens to be a ridiculously kind and accomplished man. This is not revenge, this is cosmic justice. However, news in Miami travels at the speed of light. Ethan's colleagues, Amara's new business contacts, and eventually, the legal teams all started to hear the whispers. Julian's reaction was immediate and predictable. His lawyer, the slick-haired man from the courtroom, filed an emergency motion accusing Amara of collusion and moral depravity, claiming she had planned the entire affair to defraud Julian and steal his resources. The media, always hungry for scandal involving wealth and betrayal, picked up the story. While they couldn't name Ethan publicly yet, headlines started hinting at the secret lover doctor in the high-profile divorce case. Amara was rattled. She was ready for Julian's hatred, but not the public scrutiny. She found herself scrolling through news comments, feeling the old fear creeping in. "They're calling me a gold digger," she whispered to Ethan one evening, tears welling up. "They're saying I tricked both of you." Ethan held her close, stroking her hair. "They are irrelevant, Amara. The judge knows the truth. Your lawyer knows the truth. Luna knows the truth, that she is loved. And I know the truth. This is Julian's last desperate move. He's using public opinion because he lost in court. Don't give him your focus." He pulled away slightly, looking into her eyes. "We need to make our first public statement, not to the media, but to Julian himself." The unified front. Amara's lawyer, an astute woman named Rachel, called an emergency meeting. Julian and his legal team were present, arrogant, and ready for a fight. Julian looked at Amara with pure malice. "The whore and the doctor. You really think a judge will grant you a single cent when he sees the depravity of your actions?" Amara didn't flinch. She took a slow, deep breath, remembering Ethan's words. "Control the narrative." "Julian," Amara began, her voice calm and strong. "We are here to discuss a fair settlement, not to listen to your emotional outbursts. However, since you insist on bringing up Dr. Sterling, I have a statement." She paused, making sure every eye in the room was on her. "Dr. Sterling and I have begun a relationship that is honest, transparent, and was initiated well after my final separation from you. And since you continue to make outrageous claims, here is the one truth you seem to conveniently forget. You are not Luna's father. The DNA evidence is conclusive. You have no legal standing, no emotional claim, and no moral authority to comment on my life, my relationships, or my daughter's well-being." She didn't stop there. She leaned forward, delivering the final blow. "I will not be manipulated by you anymore. The time you waste on this character assassination is time you are not preparing for the next round of litigation, where we will be scrutinizing every financial transaction you made during the duration of our marriage, including the funds you spent on your Parisian vacation. I have nothing to hide, Julian. Do you?" The words landed like a physical blow. Julian was left spluttering, his furious face turning a dark red. His lawyer frantically tried to interrupt, but the damage was done. Amara, backed by the undeniable truth, had completely disarmed his attempt at public shame. She had used his own tactics against him, but this time, with integrity. Do you admire Amara's courage in facing Julian head-on? Or do you think silence would have been a better legal strategy? Let us know in the comments. When the meaningful conclusion, the gift of truth, the scandal soon died down. Julian, realizing his character attacks were useless against the DNA test, retreated to focus on salvaging his remaining fortune. Amara and Ethan, having faced their first public test together, emerged stronger. They weren't just a couple. They were a unified front, built on shared truth and mutual respect. The greatest gift Amara received wasn't the settlement money, but the ability to stand next to the man she truly loved, without lies or secrets, and watch him embrace the daughter that was meant to be theirs all along. Their love story wasn't perfect. It was beautifully messy, forged in the ashes of betrayal and tempered by truth. What advice would you give Amara and Ethan as they try to blend their professional and personal lives? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the final chapter, where we explore the beautiful future of Amara, Ethan, and Luna. Would you like to write the final, emotional chapter where Amara and Ethan get their happily ever after? Or should we introduce a new conflict or character? Chapter 4. The Home Forged in Truth. This is the final chapter of Amara's journey. Subscribe and like this video if you believe in their happily ever after. What is the most touching moment between Ethan and Luna so far? Share your thoughts in the comments. 6 months later, finding their rhythm. 6 months had passed since the tense courtroom showdown and Amara's fearless stand against Julian. The divorce was finally finalized. Amara walked away with a fair portion of her inherited wealth, and Julian was left with a tarnished reputation and the bitter reality of his isolation. He attempted no further contact. Amara and Ethan, however, were thriving. They weren't just a couple. They were a well-oiled machine of 3. Amara's consultancy was booming, fueled by her resilience and sharp business sense. Ethan, seeing her success, was her biggest cheerleader. They had established a beautiful, chaotic rhythm. Ethan handled the school run on his morning off. Amara worked late when he had a night shift, and their evenings were sacred, spent reading to Luna, cooking, usually ordering takeout when Ethan was in charge, and simply being present. For Luna, the presence of Ethan was the most natural thing in the world. The shift from Dr. Sterling to Dad happened organically one rainy Sunday afternoon while they were building a massive fort out of blankets. Luna simply looked up, her little hands covered in pillow fluff, and asked, "Are you my real dad now, Ethan?" Ethan, pausing, his heart in his throat, looked at Amara, who just gave him a gentle nod. "Yes, sweetie," Ethan whispered, pulling her into a big hug. "I always have been." It wasn't a dramatic reveal. It was a simple confirmation of a love she had always known. If you had to name their blended family, what name would you choose for Amara, Ethan, and Luna? Let me know in the comments. The proposal and the cliff's edge. One year after Amara walked out on Julian for the last time, Ethan planned a trip. Not to a flashy resort, but to a quiet, scenic spot on the North Carolina coast, a place where they had spent a brief, happy weekend during their initial reconnection years ago. It was sunset. They stood on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, the vast blue mirroring the expansive future before them. "This is where it all started, didn't it?" Amara murmured, leaning into him. "A lot of mistakes were made right after this, but this view, it always reminded me of hope. It reminded me of what I lost," Ethan corrected gently. He turned to face her, his eyes deep and serious. "Amara, when I first met you, I was too young to fight for you. When I met you again, I was too angry to understand you. Now I see you for the first time, a powerful, brave, incredibly kind woman." He took her hands. "You didn't need me to rescue you. You rescued yourself. You taught me the difference between a life of comfort and a life of truth." Ethan didn't get down on one knee. Instead, he pulled out a simple, beautiful ring, a sapphire, Luna's birthstone, surrounded by tiny diamonds. "This isn't a proposal for an arrangement or a title," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is a request to officially forge our truths together. Amara Hayes, will you choose me? Will you choose us? Will you choose to make this little chaotic, beautiful family permanent? Amara didn't hesitate. Tears streamed down her face, not of sorrow, but of absolute release and joy. Yes, she choked out. Ethan Sterling, I choose us. I choose the truth. Do you think Amara and Ethan's relationship is stronger because they started with betrayal and ended with honesty? Give us a like if you agree. A simple wedding and a lasting legacy. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair held in their own backyard, now lovingly transformed into a lush garden. Luna, wearing a tiny white dress, served as the flower girl and the official ring bearer, a role she took very seriously. Julian was a ghost of the past. The only publicity they had was a single photo shared on Amara's new consultancy website, showing the three of them, a happy, ordinary family. In her final vows, Amara looked at Ethan, then at Luna standing proudly beside him. I promised myself a long time ago that I would never again settle for a life that looked perfect, but felt empty, Amara vowed, her voice ringing with conviction. Ethan, you and Luna are my proof that when you dare to face the ugly truth, you make room for beautiful, profound happiness. You are my home, not a haven from the storm, but the steady ground I stand on, even when the storm rages. Ethan's vows were equally moving, promising to always lead with honesty, love, and the understanding that Luna was the precious center of their universe. The story of Amara Hayes became more than just a scandal. It became an urban legend in Miami about the woman who lost a decade to a lie, only to reclaim it all with one brave choice. It was a story of a woman who chose self-respect over social status, and in doing so, found a genuine family. Meaningful conclusion. Rewrite your life. Amara's journey from a naive college student to a betrayed wife, and finally, to a self-made woman and loving partner, is a powerful reminder. Your past mistakes do not define your future potential. She didn't just escape a bad marriage. She reclaimed her child's true identity and chose a life of authenticity. Her greatest victory wasn't the settlement. It was the ability to look at her daughter and her husband and know, without a shadow of a doubt, that the family they had built was entirely based on love and the unshakable foundation of truth. What is the one takeaway from Amara's story that you will apply to your own life? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to share this incredible story and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales of courage and transformation. Chapter 5. The Uninvited Shadow. Subscribe now and hit that like button if you know that even after a happy ending, life always brings new challenges. What do you predict is the biggest future threat to Amara and Ethan's peace? Share your predictions in the comments. The honeymoon phase and the hospital politics. Life settled into a rhythm of deep, comfortable contentment after the wedding. Amara's consultancy, now rebranded with a focus on ethical business practices, was wildly successful. Ethan, promoted to Director of Pediatric Services, was balancing his demanding job with his devoted role as a father and husband. Their biggest challenge was logistics, balancing Ethan's unpredictable hospital schedule with Amara's travel. But they handled it with communication and humor, often leaving sticky notes with schedule updates all over the refrigerator. However, the honeymoon phase was about to be tested, not by an external threat like Julian, but by an internal one within Ethan's professional world. A new doctor, Dr. Serena Hayes, was hired as the Vice Director of Pediatric Services, a brilliant, ambitious woman with a reputation for sharp elbows and a deep desire for Ethan's role. Dr. Hayes was immediately friendly to Amara, praising her resilience and business acumen. But behind the pleasant facade, a different kind of tension began to simmer. Ethan started working longer hours. He was constantly stressed, and his usual calm demeanor frayed. When Amara asked what was wrong, he was vague. "It's just Dr. Hayes," he sighed one evening, massaging his temples. "She's aggressive. She challenges my decisions in meetings, questions my budget, and generally makes every day a political battle. She wants my job, and she's making it obvious." "Well, you're better at your job than anyone," Amara reassured him. "Don't let her play mind games." "It's more than games," Ethan muttered. "She subtly suggested today that my focus on Luna and the time I take off for family matters might be impacting my commitment to the hospital. She's hinting at my priorities." Amara's blood ran cold. This felt like Julian, not infidelity, but the insidious, manipulative attempt to control a man through his professional fears. Have you ever faced a colleague who used personal attacks to gain a professional advantage? How did you handle it? Tell us in the comments. The cold calculation. The situation escalated when Dr. Hayes, knowing Amara had a significant meeting out of town, scheduled a mandatory all-day Saturday audit meeting for Ethan. It was calculated to interrupt their scheduled family weekend. Ethan was furious, but felt trapped. "If I miss this, she'll document it as lack of dedication before the board review. I have to go." Amara saw the look of defeat in his eyes, the same defeat she used to feel. She refused to let him succumb to that control. "No, you don't," Amara said firmly. "You are the director. You are not her subordinate. You are allowing her to frame the narrative, just like Julian did to me. We fight this with strategy, not with obedience." Amara, the business strategist, swung into action. "First you go. But you don't go alone," Amara advised. "You take a trusted witness. You delegate tasks to prove efficiency, not commitment to unnecessary busy work. Second, and most importantly, you focus on her weakness, which is her ambition. She's brilliant, but she's a known political operator, not a healer. You remind the board why you are the leader, your humanity." Amara dug into her network. She quickly found subtle, verifiable professional complaints about Dr. Hayes' treatment of junior staff at her previous hospital. Not anything illegal, but evidence of a toxic management style. She looked at Ethan. "We use this, not to attack her, but to defend your leadership style before she can attack your family focus. We show the board that your compassion is not a weakness, but a strength that makes your department functional and loyal." Do you think Amara's strategic intervention is appropriate, or should Ethan handle his professional battles alone? Share your opinion. The boardroom win. The day of the Saturday meeting arrived. Ethan walked in, armed with data, confidence, and a subtle new strategy. Dr. Hayes was sharp, dissecting the budget and hinting at inefficiencies that could be solved if the director had fewer, outside commitments. She waited for Ethan to defensively explain his schedule. Instead, he then stood up. He didn't engage in the attack. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes, for your detailed analysis," Ethan began, addressing the full board. "I agree that my priority is efficiency. And that is why, in the last 6 months, my department has achieved a 98% staff retention rate and a 15% increase in patient satisfaction, which directly impacts our funding." He continued, his voice resonating with authority. "My commitment to my team and my family is not an inefficiency. It's my greatest asset. My staff feels supported, not micromanaged. They see me leave on time to read a bedtime story to my daughter, and they know that the hospital supports a sustainable work-life balance, something that drastically reduces burnout, turnover, and therefore..." He then subtly dropped the counter-narrative, referencing the complaints Amara had uncovered. "I believe that leadership should be built on trust and compassion, not on fear and forced overtime. A management style that, as we can see in the recent data from other institutions, always leads to higher turnover and lower morale." The board, a mix of businessmen and longtime physicians, looked at Dr. Hayes, who was visibly deflated. Her aggressive, cutthroat approach was immediately contrasted with Ethan's calm, humane leadership. Ethan won the room. He didn't just defend his job. He redefined the definition of commitment and leadership. Later that day, Dr. Hayes was given a firm warning about professional conduct. Her tactics had failed. Meaningful conclusion. The real partnership. Ethan came home that evening, not defeated, but victorious. He walked into the kitchen, where Amara was making cookies with Luna. He didn't say a word about the meeting. He just looked at Amara with profound love and admiration. "I didn't win that. We won that," he whispered to her later, as they watched Luna sleep. "I realized something today. Julian's power came from keeping me silent and isolated. My power comes from having you, my partner, who fights for our truth and reminds me who I am when I forget." Amara smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. Their marriage wasn't about two individuals standing side by side. It was about two veterans of life's wars fighting back to back, using their combined experience to protect the peace they had earned. The shadow was gone, replaced by the light of their unbreakable partnership. What new challenge do you think they should face next? Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on Amara and Ethan's life. Chapter 6, Luna's Legacy. Subscribe now and hit that like button. If you believe that children are resilient and always find their way to the truth, what advice would you give Amara and Ethan about explaining Luna's unique family history to her? Share your parenting insights in the comments. The seeds of inquiry. 2 years flew by. Luna was now 9, a curious, bright, and deeply loved third grader. Her life was stable, anchored by Amara's quiet strength and Ethan's playful devotion. The memory of Julian was a distant, bad dream, and her reality was her parents and their cozy, sun-filled home. However, the world always has a way of introducing complexity. One day, Luna came home from school visibly troubled. She sat down at the kitchen table, pushing her homework aside. "Mom, Dad," she started, fiddling with a crayon. "Sarah in my class. She said her mom and dad got married first, and then she was born." Amara and Ethan exchanged a quick, knowing glance. They had always planned to tell Luna the full story, about Julian, the hospital, and the truth of her paternity, at an age when she could process it. It seemed that time had arrived sooner than they anticipated. "Is that how it was for us?" Luna asked, her big brown eyes, so much like Ethan's, fixed on them. "Did you and Mom get married first?" Amara sat next to her, taking her hand. "Sweetie, our story is a little different, and it's also one of the bravest stories there is." They didn't hide the truth. They simplified it, focusing on the feelings. Amara explained that she and Julian were married, but unhappy. She explained the brief time she and Ethan were separated, and the deep love that existed between Amara and Ethan from the very beginning. Ethan focused on the love story. "You weren't a mistake, Luna. You were the reason your mom and I found our way back to the truth. You were born from a moment of pure, honest love, long before we could build this home. And when you were sick, I got to take care of you, which was the greatest gift in the world." Luna listened, absorbed, occasionally asking questions about the logistics of the divorce, but ultimately, she grasped the core message. She was deeply wanted, and her existence was the catalyst for her parents' happiness. Do you think it's better to tell children a complex truth all at once, or in stages? Tell us your approach. The unseen threat. Just as Luna seemed to process her unique origin, a new, unwelcome shadow appeared. Amara began receiving anonymous emails. They weren't threatening, but unsettling. They were photoshopped images. Julian and Amara smiling together from an old Christmas card, overlaid with text asking, "Do you ever miss the real family?" Amara dismissed them as Julian's final, pathetic attempt to lash out. She blocked the sender and deleted the emails. However, one particular email contained something chilling. A photo of Luna, taken covertly while she was playing soccer at the park, accompanied by a single sentence. She has his eyes, but does she have his money? Amara's blood turned to ice. This wasn't Julian. He wouldn't risk getting this close, and he certainly wouldn't admit that Luna had Ethan's eyes. This was someone else, someone watching them, and someone focused on the financial aspect of Luna's origin. Amara immediately involved Ethan. They went to the police, but without an explicit threat of violence, the police could only advise heightened security. Amara's lawyer, Rachel, had a theory. Julian's family. Julian's parents were always focused on legacy and wealth, Rachel explained. They despised Amara, but they adored the idea of their grandchild inheriting the family name and money. They were devastated by the DNA test, but they might be trying to prove some financial link or simply harassing you out of spite. The shadow wasn't Julian. It was his family, clinging to a name and a fortune that wasn't theirs to claim. If you were Amara, what non-legal steps would you take immediately to protect your family from anonymous harassment? The unexpected visitor. The harassment peaked when Amara received a formal official letter. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was from a high-profile public relations firm representing the Torres Foundation, Julian's family's charity. The letter was a polite request for a meeting between Amara and Julian's mother, Mrs. Ilara Torres, to discuss a private matter concerning Luna's future. Amara was initially ready to throw the letter away, but Ethan convinced her otherwise. They're using a PR firm, not a legal firm, Amara, Ethan noted. They don't want a lawsuit. They want to control the optics and possibly buy their way back into some form of contact. You are a businesswoman now. Let's treat this as a negotiation, not a fight. Amara agreed, but with one condition. The meeting would be on her turf, in her office, and Ethan would be present. Mrs. Torres arrived, a woman of impeccable, cold elegance. She didn't offer a hug or even a pleasantry. She immediately got down to business. Mrs. Sterling, Mrs. Torres began, ignoring Ethan completely. Luna, though not biologically ours, was raised for years under the Torres name. It is a known fact she possesses significant de facto emotional ties to our family's public narrative. The foundation is willing to set up a substantial, 7-figure trust fund in Luna's name, dedicated to her future education and security, under one condition: occasional monitored visits to ensure her upbringing reflects our family's values, and a promise of silence regarding the DNA test. It was a blatant attempt to buy back control and silence the truth. Amara looked at the cold, calculating woman, then at Ethan, who gave her a nod of encouragement. She smiled, a calm, victorious smile. Mrs. Torres, Amara said, leaning forward. Thank you for the offer. However, my daughter's education and security are already well funded by her parents. And as you noted, Luna has inherited significant values. Those values are honesty, courage, and self-respect. Values she learned when her mother chose truth over a fortune. Amara pushed the papers back across the table. We decline your offer. Luna's legacy is not built on your money or your name. It is built on the love of her true father, her true mother, and a foundation of honesty. That truth is worth more than any 7-figure trust fund. Mrs. Torres was stunned. She hadn't been rejected. She had been schooled. She stood up, her face tight with suppressed fury, and left without another word. The Torres shadow was finally, definitively, cast out. Meaningful conclusion. The true inheritance. Amara and Ethan didn't need wealth or status to secure their daughter's future. They secured it with integrity and love. Luna's true inheritance was not Julian's money or the Torres name, but the unbreakable bond of a family built on the difficult, beautiful truth. She would grow up knowing that her existence was the ultimate proof of love conquering fear. What lesson do you think Mrs. Torres learned from Amara in that final confrontation? Don't forget to like and subscribe to see what amazing things Luna does when she grows up.